some for reunion, and as hearts have connected and we have shared together in such incredible truths that have been shared this day. We have been truly blessed, starting with Kimberly this morning. Wherever you are, Kimberly, Miigwech, thank you. And to our friends from Taiwan, what a blessing it is to venture in this relationship together, and appreciate it. This evening, we are going to highlight a relationship that started at the very beginning of time, even before, at the beginning of time, there we go. I was gonna say, I caught my own little slip on that one. At the very beginning of NAITS, and even before that, and Terry and Adrian shared a little bit about that. And so tonight, we are going to have a time where we honor the legacy of one of our dear friends and brothers. And so I'm going to ask Terry if he would come down, and Catherine, and Bear, Diane, whoever else needs to be up here, I think. Some of you have never had the privilege of meeting Richard Twist, but you have heard about his legacy. Come, my dear. Come, my dear. You have heard about his legacy, and this evening we want to honor that legacy. And I'm just going to read a little bit. You did get a glimpse of who Richard was last night at the convocation. That was just a little glimpse of who he is. He was also an incredibly brilliant scholar, and I just want to read this. He says, quote, "We must genuinely appreciate all cultures as being capable of reflecting biblical faith. We must move away from American Christian mythology, which undergirds colonialism and its resulting paternalism in indigenous communities. We must embrace new theological perspectives emerging from Native leaders as being equal." Now, if Richard were here today, I would say not only equal, but in many ways leading the way now. And oh, if he could see what has happened. The words of Richard Twist, many of us hold dear to our hearts. And for those of you that do not know who he was a member of the, and I'm gonna have to get you to help me pronounce this, Sigangu? Siganchu, okay. Close. Lakota, Oyete, from the Rosebud Sioux Reservation right here in South Dakota. So this is his homeland. He was a founding member of the NAITS when it was the North America Institute for Indigenous Theological Studies. And he was also part of that transition when it became NAITS, an Indigenous learning community. Richard didn't set out to revolutionize higher education. He simply believed that one could be authentically Indigenous and authentically follow the Jesus way. He taught this message not only with NAITS, but also at other institutions such as Portland State University, Warner Pacific College, George Fox Seminary, where we signed our first MOU, and here at Kairos University when it was known as Sioux Falls Seminary. Today we are overjoyed to announce that Richard's legacy, the impact that he has had, will continue on as we establish the Richard Twist Education Fund. As you will hear, funding can be a barrier and is often a major barrier to post-secondary education for Indigenous communities. And that's even more true when it comes to graduate studies. And this fund will allow us to support Indigenous students who are pursuing their master's or their PhD degrees with NAITS. And it will allow those students to continue sharing new theological perspectives that Richard wrote about. And as we gathered as a PhD cohort, Damien, how many of us were there? Where are you, Damien? 12? 12 PhD students. 14. 16. The number, 16. The number keeps increasing. I'm going to say, We'll go with 17. Because, and I'll say, we have a number, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and it's like, we're not very good at numbers to begin with. But it keeps growing, and it's exciting to see that this will be able to provide support for Indigenous students, and that impact will be profound. We hope that this education fund not only honors Richard, but also his family. And we think of Catherine and the boys who could not be with us, because it wasn't just Richard. Richard couldn't be Richard without the support of the family. And we know that, and we had heard about that last evening. And so we are grateful to partner with the Twist family. And I believe that Terry is going to come and speak a little bit about Richard. But I was going to say, I want to say a few words about Kath as well. Because Kath probably doesn't even know this. I'm not sure if I've ever shared this. But when I came to my first NAIITS Symposium, which happened to be the second symposium, I came very skeptical. I came with a lot of questions because I'd always been taught that you had to choose either to be Christian or Indigenous. And when one of the founding board members, Cornelius Buller, who is not Indigenous, invited me to come because he worked with my denomination, I said, I will go because you have invited me, Cornelius, and I trust that you will not lead me astray in this. And so I went, and they had some wonderful presentations up at the front. I do not remember any of them. Not that they weren't good. They were probably really profound. I think partly I actually do remember one because I responded to one. But it's on the table out there. There we go. It's out on the table. You can go look. There we go. She's doing her job. But one of the most profound impacts was when we sat together in a talking circle. And I sat in a talking circle, and Kath was there, and Bev, and Edith, and Cheryl. I think they all hung out together. I'm not even sure if it was a formal talking circle or if we just kind of gathered around them and sat together and talked and shared. And as I listened, I found home. As I listened to the wisdom of these founding family members and founding board members of NAIITS. And I said, I want to be a part of this. And so as you sat there, Kath, and just shared your experience and shared the journey that your family has been on, it touched my life. And so I want to say thank you.
So you see Terry and I back there laughing. There's so many little inside jokes and little, digs in the ribs of the journey that we've shared. Richard truly was ahead of his time. When we started with Choni International, we took $20, walked into a print shop, and came out with 500 business cards, and we were instantly an international ministry. Unlike NAIITS, who had to bring it forward. But that was definitely the man I married. Although I didn't know it at the time, we were constantly stepping off of cliffs and feeling like we were going into thin air. And Richard was the kind of person, and so this picture, it's, I think, one of everybody's favorites. That's on our office steps, looking out across the yard that we didn't water because it cost so much money on city water. And then that's the little swimming pool that we had. Anybody that did family camp? Shondine, Bear, we would do family camp after these, or we would do picnicky things and overnighters at our house after we had family camp. And honestly, it was the most fun, of my life, a number of years doing that. Anyway, I will flit around, as you will soon experience. Richard would like poke at things and say, what do you think is going to happen if we push on that? And I'm like, oh, don't do it. No. And he'd push on it, whatever it was. And there would be these outsized results. We would scratch our heads and kind of like, okay, well, let's do something else. And what would happen if and we're in isolation at the time. We don't realize that what I like to refer to it as is God's fingers are in the soil all over the US and Canada. We haven't met each other yet, but his fingers are in the soil and things are being pushed up. And then we started to meet each other, and what a relief to meet other like-minded people. So last night, when we were going through the history of how all of this started, and Wachoni International has its own history that weaves in and out of all of this. So I remember when Richard, I love how Terry says it, walked on. Because he left this life. And there was times when he first left, I'm like, but where did you go? And Christians have so much certainty, and we're so busy telling me that he was, worshiping God, around the throne, worshiping God in his regalia. And I'm like, I hope not. No. Surely there's more mystery than that. And why do we have so much certainty? So, I still sort of like, but where did you go? And then Adrian, who I consider the poet of the group, a man of profound words, at Richard's memorial, invited Richard to time travel and visit us in our dreams and at times when we would need him. And I've experienced that a very little bit, and people reassure me that's because he knows I don't need it like maybe other people do. But anytime I need to see Richard, I have but to turn and look at my 4 sons and look at my 8 grandchildren and the deposit. And I will tell you, those of you that wonder and have met my sons, they are flourishing, each and every one of them. And I have 3 Indigenous daughter-in-laws that like me. That's, I think, an absolute gift. And Richard would be so stinking proud of how things have unfolded, and especially here. And we as a family don't like to put, Richard didn't like to put his name on things. So he wasn't the Richard Twist Ministry and the Richard Twist, House of Blues for, guitar players. But it's okay, we conferred as a family, and when we were asked, could we name this, have his name on this, I had some good conversations and asked a few questions, and ultimately, absolutely, because this is so good, what has happened, what is unfolding still, and what will continue to happen, and this is, going to far outreach, any of us. So last night's history lesson was like, so when Richard died, it really felt like this book closed. And the only person that I can turn to and say, hey, remember, was gone. And then last night, I'm reminded of, you may not share the same chapters that I shared with Richard, but you share so many of them. And so it was like a pop-up book opening up, and everything just stood up in 3D, and the video that Ronnie showed of Richard, I'm like, why would you hang on to that for all these years so that I could see it and just be so delighted to see it. So this really is an honor, an outsized honor. It really is. It's like so many of the things that we got to do and touch and be a part of. You enter into it with hope this works out, and then this wonderful outsized result. So I'll be really looking forward to hearing who the first recipients are, and of their journey and all of that. But I just want to express my deep appreciation for how kind you have been. I've got about I think I've been to 1 or 2 NAITS since Richard passed, but not many. And life has grown up, and I will say that it's quite delightful, and I'm enjoying the things that fill my days. But you have all been very kind to receive me, to remind me of who you are. And so often people will say, oh, I've had dinner at your house. And I'm like, oh, tell me I was nice, please. So this has been a pleasure. And if you have an opportunity to just stop me for a few minutes, please do. I'm always delighted to meet folks and have a little bit of conversation. So, thank you for doing this. When Terry said I would be a patron, I went, no, that's a weird word. But here I am. So, anyway, you be nice.
I won't be nice. I won't be nice. Love you.
Yeah, I love you too.
So as you might imagine, RT was bigger than the life he lived by a long shot. And part of the reason for that is that it took a lot of people to be Richard Twiss. Right?
I missed that. I was talking to Terry.
You're not even paying attention. Gee. I said it took a lot of people to be Richard Twiss.
Oh, so many.
Yeah. Like, he didn't do it on his own.
That's good.
It wasn't just Kath, although, as I said last night, if it weren't for Kath and Bev, some of the stuff that we were thinking we'd get into mischief about would never have happened. And as you could tell by the picture, he was as charismatic a person as anyone could imagine a person to be. But you see the glint in his eye? The devilish glint in his eye, which was, I'm going to push that. I'm going to push that. But Richard was a good journey mate. We were best friends. And, you know, we all grieve in different ways. The passing of someone who is so important in our lives. Adrian with his poetry and the constant rejoinders and reminders of the loss. You ghosted us. You went. What did you do that for? Or Wendy, or Cheryl, Randy, Ray, Cornelius. All of us who were the original 9, and then those who'd come along after felt the loss. Richard was our charismatic voice, not just for Wachoni. And Wachoni emerged out of this ethos that spun out of that place over there where these 4 beautiful women are from, Aotearoa. And we came back from there, all of us, and you put your $50 into the business cards, and off you went. And we came back from there, and we put our energy into these whole range of things that emerged. So Richard's energies in promoting his charisma, his being bigger than life, and he truly was, his being an incredibly articulate spokesperson for so many things related to Indigenous work in North America and around the globe. His being an added uncle and father to so many in Aotearoa, in New Zealand, in Australia, in the Philippines, and elsewhere. Bigger than life. You couldn't ask for a better journey partner in the work that we undertook. And as I mentioned last night, I remember the first thing we did, just the 2 of us, in Spokane, and came out of that church and looked at one another and were amazed that they wanted to hear from us, that we had anything meaningful to say that they would want to hear. And Richard went on to write so effectively and communicate so effectively that young men like Donnie Begay would come along and say, I like what I hear there that I've never heard anywhere else before. And no one has spoken like that to me. Young men and women wanting some answers to questions that they had that no one else was providing, and Richard was able to provide that in a skillful way. Richard did his doctoral degree at Asbury in the cohort that we launched there a number of years ago, and the work that he did was incredibly, incredibly good. And today I still hear from people about the quality of the work that Richard did at Asbury Theological Seminary in his doctoral degree. He was so incredibly present in life, and he is still present in that cloud of witnesses around us today. So this education fund furthers the vision that not only Richard had, but all of those who came around him and said, could you tell me about? Help me understand this. Or church leaders who got really annoyed with him when he pushed their theological buttons. When he stood up in a pulpit and said, I haven't been to church in, I don't know how long, and teased them and poked them and cajoled, so that he would get a reaction that would cause them to think about what they were doing. And Richard was stellar at doing that. So those young men and women who follow, and some of us not so young, in his footsteps, this educational fund will help significantly Indigenous peoples pursue the kind of pathway that Richard so graciously, effectively, and humorously led us into. And I still never got a word from Winona about who was who. Do you remember that?
Between the team?
So Richard and I used to do tag team, and Winona, Richard's mom, came one night and heard us, and then she said, "You remind me of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis." And so I remember asking her, "Who is who, Winona?" And of course, I was pretty sure I knew. I was the straight man. Always. Richard's wit was far sharper than mine. And I remember at Richard's memorial, and Winona sitting right down in front, and as we closed, I went down there and I said, "Winona, who was who?" I still don't know, but I really do. So this is an important recognition of an important, very significant member of this journey, without whom this journey would not have taken place.
Yes,
We're going to step to the side.
we're going to sit down.
You're going to sit down?
Yeah, there's a little video.
Okay, we'll go
So
sit down.
sit in the front row, Kat.
Well, if I were to give the elevator speech of NAITS, I would say NAITS is a highly trained, exceptionally dedicated janitorial team. We clean up the messes created when Indigenous people come into contact with Christian educational institutions by creating a program and a framework that is Indigenous designed, developed, and delivered, and that is also Indigenous governed. So it allows us to deliver a theological education that is less likely to be a colonial experience and more likely to affirm Indigenous people in their experience. We are incorporated in Canada, the United States, and Australia, and we deliver theological educational programs in those three countries, as well as for students who come from New Zealand, from the Philippines, and other Indigenous contexts, including Central and South America. In fact, we're the only Indigenous designed, developed, delivered, and governed graduate and postgraduate theological educational institution in Canada, the United States, and Australia. Well, the Richard Twiss Educational Fund came about as a result of the long trajectory, the long history that Richard and I had had. We were best friends. We journeyed together many, many years, and we journeyed along this pathway of exploring how we could be authentically Indigenous and authentically Christian. We'd done so much over such a short space of time to move us forward, and then Richard passed from this life to the next. And in conversation with his wife, Catherine, and with his 4 boys, we inquired whether we could develop an educational fund that would be an honor to the family and would carry his name. So you might ask, why bother giving to the Richard Twiss Memorial Educational Fund? Well, it's because Richard Twiss gave to you. Richard Twiss gave his life to helping Indigenous and non-Indigenous people learn how to get along better. how to live life more effectively together, how to relate well together, how to follow Jesus together.
And even though they may be different, that doesn't make them any less biblical, even if it's way outside the box of our own cultural understandings about what's normal or what's biblical, etc.
I encourage you to give to the Richard Twist Memorial Fund for a variety of reasons. The first being the impact that it has on the student themselves, but also the larger community, including the Christian faith community. I think as we learn from Indigenous theologians and scholars, our worldview expands and our understanding of Scripture deepens, and our relationship with one another. We learn to walk in right relations with one another, but we also learn to walk in right relations with all creation, and to begin to have a deeper understanding of how we are connected and how we need to relate to one another in a more honoring and a respectful way. So I invite you to donate to the Richard Twist Memorial Fund.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Diane Kleimenhaig. I'm the Director of Operations for Indigenous Pathways, and I am a numbers person. So I wanted to let you know that if you're a student in the master's program with NAITS, it can cost you up to $40,000 to get your degree, depending on the course that you choose. If you're a PhD student, we're upwards of $50,000. This year we've had 5 requests for support for the programs that are coming, and we're doing our best to meet those requests because we want this work to be as accessible as possible. And we can't do that without support. So I'm going to tell you a couple ways that you can give. There's the QR codes, which are here and outside. And there's a website, NAIITS.com. Just click on donate. On the brochures that I've handed out tonight, it's on there. But I want you to think about this a little bit deeper than just what can I do. I was wondering if anybody is willing to go back to their communities, talk to their church community, to the groups that you're a part of, and see if they would like to be a part of this journey as well. If you would like to do that, please talk to me before the weekend's over, and we can support you in that with the literature, the information that you need to do that, and connection. So I know that each person in this room today has been affected by Indigenous interpretation of Scripture, or you wouldn't be here, and that's why I'm here. And so I am thankful for this education fund so that that can continue and grow and flourish, and I'm thankful that you're here. So we had asked Cheryl Bear to come and do a closing song for this event. Cheryl couldn't be here tonight, and so we miss her. We miss you, Cheryl. But her son Bear is here and has offered to share with us. And so please come up, Bear.
Hadi suenda sostrosli tantemusli narlewasten inga dene daketh Snechelia Udagi, Snechelia Behunji, Snechelia Ko. My name is Sascho, Big Bear in Daketh. Come from Narlewaten, Daketh Nation up in Canada. I'm really grateful to be here with all of you. Grateful for my elders, my Behunji, grateful to my creator, Udagi, and to Ko, to the land that we're on. I'm here in my mother's stead, and I'm going to share a song that was given to me in a dream that I had. Even the conference is on dreams. And before I sing that song, I'll share a dream that I actually had of Uncle Richard recently, last year or so. I was walking with him, started off that way, and he came up next to me, and I looked up at him, because he's always been taller than me. And I said, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that because of you and my parents, I have so many brothers and sisters, uncles and aunties, and family, and I'm just really grateful. And he looked down, and he did that, nothing. And then, kind of had like a spidey sense. One of the boys needed him and darted, and that was it. And so I'm glad I had that opportunity to express my gratitude. And yeah, no, I am grateful to Uncle Richard and to all of you. No. The song that I'm going to sing was gifted to me in a dream, and it speaks of the New Hulk tradition. Smaudi silk ich is one heart, one mind. As Uncle Richard, one heart, one mind. Well, when you think of Richard in your heart and your mind, pray for his boys, pray for his grandkids. Remember them. The Jalia.
Thank you. Yes, you can.
I thought I had retired, but I keep getting up here. Last night, as we were talking the history that led to NAITS, we were very much touching wave tops. There's just so much that wasn't included, but will be in the chronology that Adrian puts together, and I'll just sign at the end. But we talked about all of the things that we missed because we didn't have the time, and we took a lot of time as it was. But one of the critical things that was centered in what we said and created the ethos that exists here emerged from our time in 1996 in Aotearoa in New Zealand at the first World Christian Gathering on Indigenous Peoples. And it was a gathering on Indigenous peoples, not of Indigenous peoples, for a reason. It was so that non-Indigenous folks could come and hang out and listen to Indigenous folks and watch Indigenous folks engage in cultural forms and expressions and conversations and speeches and so forth, and hear what we had to say. So it was on us, not of us, not just by us. That ethos continues today here, where we invite people from non-Indigenous contexts to come and join in and hang out with us. And I hope that that's been a blessing to you. But we learned that in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud, where we were privileged to go in 1996, and I remember Richard in the canoe, coming, and here he was in his buckskins, just his war shirt, and he's in his canoe, and he's got his head up like this, and he just as proud as could be to be in that canoe, coming across the water, landing there at the marae, ready for the poheri and the welcome to the land that we received there from the Maori, and that we've received countless times since. Kia ora. We have developed a strong bond, a strong relationship with the Maori community and then Australia because of the World Christian Gathering on Indigenous Peoples in 1996 in Rotorua. And we could bring that ethos back here, being authentically Indigenous and authentically followers of the Jesus way. My niece is here. She honors Bev and me to call us her parents. Not just uncle, but another father, another mother. And we've grown to love her, her brothers, her mom and dad, and Uncle Ike, who passed recently. All of these stories led to us being here tonight and to the place that you feel welcome. You feel the community, and the hospitality of the Maori is second to none. And so I'm just grateful that Hannah, and the rest of the crew are here. Sorry, I've forgotten the names. It's that age, you know. Yeah, old timers are here to present tonight. So.
When I saw this proposal come in from Carrie Ann and Irene and Hannah and Hannah, it looked like two different proposals, I have to admit, which I got really excited about. And then when I discovered that they were all speaking together, I was absolutely elated. And so they will come in a few minutes to share with us. But before we do, we're going to show a little video. We've heard about the World Christian Gathering of Indigenous Peoples and that inspirational start in 1996. We have heard about the impact of Richard and that legacy. How many of us in this room have been to even one World Christian Gathering, if not more? There's a few.
Been to all of them.
So how many have been to all of them? In case you can't see Matt's hat.
Matt and I think.
Yeah,
and,
are they the only ones?
And Sharon Minicon.
Okay. So, but the legacy that has continued on from the original vision of that, the firekeepers, has been passed on in generations, and so thankful that we have Matt and Hannah here this evening. We also think of Daniel and Larissa, who could not be here with us, but we know that that legacy in their family has continued on, and they've touched our lives. I had the privilege of going to the World Christian Gathering. I do not remember the year. I want to say 2008.
Israel,
Yeah, it was in Israel. And that was a significant event for me in many ways. I can tell you about it later. But one of the highlights occurred for me at the end when we saw the younger generation rise up and spend a whole evening in that. And we're going to hear a song that Hannah wrote and sang for this. And then you'll also hear a voice you might recognize at the beginning.
Wakatanka et kia mawani hiru hei hei da hiru hei hei do heyo hai hai de wani kie kichi mawani hiru hei hei da hiru hei
He can hear the drums calling him home. The mountains mourning their sons. 500 years or so, the men are singing memories of the land. The sound of dancing comes a symphony that echoes of the sun. Here's Lakota, here's home, visual poetry. A man of honor, a man of worth, pride and dignity. Let all creation lift up one voice as it was meant to be. Together, the Creator's masterpiece. Head held high, she beckons a new dawn. She sees the stars that lit the path her forefathers sailed upon. With trembling hands, her voice bursts forth with life, breathing a new song, a symphony that echoes off the sun. She is Molly, she is home, visual poetry. A woman of honor, a woman of worth, pride and dignity. Let all creation lift up one voice as it was meant to be. Together, the Creator's masterpiece.
Chankule, Mawani, hiru hey, hey da, hiru hey, hey do, hiyo hi, hi day.
Before we start, I just want to explain what the call was. And I hadn't registered until it was about to play. The karanga, which is the call, is representing the generation that is in positions of leadership, calling the next generation to come and to bring their dreams and to bring their visions and to stand in their place in that moment in time within creation. And that's what we enacted on that hillside in Jerusalem, the young people accepting that challenge. So it was fitting in the end, in a number of ways. Yeah.
Ka ino I tātou I runga I te ingoa o te matua, te tama me te wairua tapu. Āmine. would like to acknowledge the mountains, rivers and lakes of the 9 tribes, the 7 council fires of Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, and the sacred lands of Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, and Black Elk. Tēnā koutou katoa. On behalf of my sisters and I, it is an honour for us to stand here before each and every one of you. And it is our custom to begin with prayer. And so the song you've just heard us sing is the Lord's Prayer, found in the book of Matthew, in Te Reo Māori, the language of our heart. And so thank you for allowing us to begin this way. And we acknowledge you all and the people of this land, this whenua. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Gone the wrong way. How do we do it the other way? Yeah. It's in reverse order. Photos should be mine from home, Matt. Kia ora, everybody. While Matt's finding photos of home. I bring greetings from my parents, Sam and Thelma Chapman, and from the rest of my whānau, who are at home watching on live, I think, maybe, if Dad got the link right. I got a text at 7 saying, Hannah, what's the link? It is a real privilege to be here and to be sharing our kōrero with you, and our whakaaro, our thoughts and our words with you this evening. I asked my friends to join me because I didn't want to do this by myself, and they're awesome, and they said yes. And so we also want to thank those who supported us to be here, there were a grant from the Wilberforce Foundation, and then individual gifts, which meant that we haven't had to spend a cent in order to be here and to find accommodation and insurance. Like, we've been really blessed. And it also confirmed to us that we should be here. So thank you to everyone who's made it possible. Matt, are we good to go? No, just photos of the land. It's all right. I'll just carry on. Oh, there we are. Okay. Oh, good. Ko pehanga te maunga, ko tongarira te awa, ko waipapa te whenua, ko turangi tukua te hapu, ko Chapman te whānau, ko Hāmerawa, ko Thelma o Kumātua, ko Hana Repe katoku ingoa. Pehanga is my maunga, my mountain there in the background. Tongariro is my awa, the river in the foreground. Waipapa is the land that lies between the mountain and the lake, which the river finds its way to. Turangi tukua is my hapu, sometimes translated as sub-tribe. Chapman is my family. Hami or Sam and Thelma are my parents, and my name is Hannah. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. My father was 15 years old when he and his brother and father sat on the back porch of the homestead at home in Turangi, just to the right of where the river stops in that photo. And they watched helplessly as government workers bulldozed the orchards and the gardens of the farm and created a new boundary around the family homestead with a wire fence. The government levelled 1,665 hectares of our Ngāti Tuangi Tukua ancestral lands, destroying farms, gardens, traditional birthing sites, and other sacred sites to build a new town for a hydro dam project. This was approximately 400 hectares more than what our elders had agreed could be utilised for the town. And at the end of the 10-year term of what was supposed to be a lease where land would be handed back, the government instead sold that land. In a matter of months, they forever changed the land and us, her people, for the sake of development. After years of pursuing justice, our hapu accepted the terms of what is known as the Ngāti Turangi Tukua Treaty Settlement of 1999 with the Crown. Included in that settlement was a unique whānau or family claim, my family's claim, that ensured the return of some of that whenua back to us. We're still waiting. It's been a slow journey. My father was 68 years old when some of the land was returned, and it included the wire fence. When that fence was being put up that day, my koro, my grandfather, turned to my dad and my uncle and he said, before he said this thing, a government worker called out to them and he said, "Old man, this fence is payment for your land." My koro then turned to my dad and my uncle and he said, "Never take that fence down. Let it serve as a reminder of what happened here. Remember, tell the story." When the land was returned with that wire fence, our wider family eventually were put into a position where we could reoccupy the land as part of the settlement. And then about 10 years ago now, Mum and Dad had the opportunity to purchase that land on behalf of the rest of the family, and were gifted a house randomly, and that house had to be moved onto the land. In order for that to happen, the removal company said that wire fence had to come down. And my dad struggled with that because of what my koro had asked. And we talked about it, and we talked about the importance of the vision that Dad had for the whenua now, the dream that he had for that land and for our whānau to be reunited. And so we took the fence down, and their new home was built, and they have established new gardens. But beyond that fence, there's another one. And it stands as a symbol still of what stands between us and the whenua and the awa, the river, that we are the traditional custodians of. So as we pursue the conclusion of our whānau claim, our family's claim with the Crown, and I represent my family in those, I have been representing my family in those negotiations for the past 8 years. So as we pursue that conclusion, we are committed to ensuring that our engagement and our process honours who God has created us to be, that it's governed and shaped by our values, our ways of being, doing and knowing, and that it facilitates the fullness of life that Jesus promised us as people of this land. And all of this, despite having to function within colonial realities and systems that are not designed or equipped to facilitate such an approach. In their paper, Indigenous Inclusion and Indigenising the University, Te Kaweho Hoskins and Alison Jones say this: "We tend not to use the term decolonisation simply because it turns attention towards the coloniser and invites preoccupation with criticising the colonised system rather than focusing on what might be possible. That is, to foreground indigenisation is to concentrate positively on the implications of rangatiratanga, which is sovereignty, and of Māori worlds for places such as schools and universities and NAIITS. We agree with this, because our dream is to advance our rangatiratanga, our sovereignty, and expand our Māori world, our Te Rangitukoa world, beyond the systems and the organisational structures of the present into our future making. As a condition of the settlement process, the first thing we had to do, according to the Crown negotiators, was to choose the type of entity that we would use to receive the land into. But instead of accepting that standard procedure, we instead focused our thinking on the future and asked ourselves how we could facilitate the best possible trajectory for successive generations to exercise their rangatiratanga, their sovereignty. Our reason why had to be well established before we considered the Crown's prioritisation of the what. The necessity to pause the process and ask, what's the most important thing here, required each of us as individuals to regularly surrender and orient ourselves towards collective well-being, and to accept the inevitable burden of persevering through challenge and some full-on difficulty for a future that we may not occupy. Such tensions add to the complexity of becoming an Indigenous organisation, and it's a task that stretches faith. Erawera Pendergrass Tārina notes this: Indigenous organisations are complex. Their success is dependent on their profitability and achieving a fit within a Western political and economic context. Yet these very successes undermine their cultural integrity and purpose for existence. Underlying this complexity is the constant tension of balancing these two opposing cultural forces. However, change is occurring as new leaders are growing to negotiate these tensions and to help others see the island. In Aotearoa, laws that govern Māori land differ to those of general land. Current financial systems and policies limit Māori access to capital, particularly as landowners. As a post-settlement entity, our organisation will have responsibilities to whānau and to whenua, to family and land, and obligations to external partnerships, like interest groups such as hunting and fishing. And some of these partnerships will be legislatively governed, and that includes 2 councils and the Department of Conservation. It's a complex environment from which to envisage a different reality. Because of advice from younger relatives who are legal experts, we chose to forego the protections from sale that are uniquely applied to Māori land. It's a separate designation from general land, and the attraction is that, the protection from sale. But the advice from our younger cousins was not to do that, because it would limit development opportunities, including home ownership or housing that we might want to provide for family members. So whilst it seemed counterintuitive at first, and it certainly isn't the normal scenario, the purpose wasn't just to protect the whenua from sale or to meet a legislative condition of the settlement process. It was to choose the entity type, or the waka, the canoe, as a metaphor, that would best advance our sovereignty as custodians of that land. As Pendergrass Tārina observed, new generations helped us to negotiate the tensions and to see the island. See the island is a concept from the ancient celestial navigation traditions of our Polynesian ancestors. Oh, I forgot this one. But this is the inside of our whare at home, our ancestral meeting house. I just like to show it off because I think it's so beautiful. Our ancestors conceived that the waka, or the double hull canoe, was still, and that the horizons came towards them. They were masters of navigation who memorised the pathways of the stars, sun and moon, who read the signs in the environments, learned to trust their instincts, and made adjustments to the position of the waka to ensure its alignment with the star pathways. To quote Shelley Spiller, such navigation is not just about the stars, sun, clouds, and the swells or the wind. It's based on a deep understanding of the relationships between them. This is how they could see the island. That is, they could visualize their destination and mentally map a route to it despite never having been there before. This is how our ancestors navigated the Pacific Ocean, which is the largest expanse on Earth if you combine all of the landmass of the world. The Pacific Ocean's bigger. Inevitably, as they read the environment, they read the elements, and they adjusted their waka, the desired horizons and their island that they could mentally see would come towards them. It's a process of becoming. Shelley Spiller, who has done incredible work in this area, in this type of navigation that's called wayfinding, she describes becoming as follows. From a Māori perspective, this concept of becoming is known as tupu, which means to unfold one's nature. In an organisational context, this means developing people so they are able to express their true nature and fulfil their potential personally and collectively. For us as Māori, our true nature and potential are in wairua, in spirit. Wairua can refer to the non-physical element of a person that exists beyond physical death. It can also refer to the spiritual element that can be activated or instilled in something by people who are acting as agents of atua, of spiritual beings, or of acting as agents of Io Matua Kore, the parentless one, creator. Wairua and the well-being of wairua sits in stark contrast to the secular system in which we must establish our organisational structure. It's another tension. So how then might we consider tupu, becoming, and wairua well-being, spiritual well-being, when imagining our organisational structure, governance and management, where our strategic planning considers the wairua implications of what we do and perpetuate through operational functions, policy and legacies of economic development? What potential might unfold in us individually and collectively if we understood ourselves to be agents of Io Matua Kore, creator, inviting the Holy Spirit, Te Wairua Tapu, to dwell in our organisations with a view that looks far beyond our physical death? What if our aspirations were not to build empires that expand exploitative agendas, but to instead seek islands where people are unfolded into the fullness of their potential as beloved created? The Māori cultural renaissance of the 1970s and 1980s forged significant transformation in Aotearoa. The process we're going through as a whānau, as a family, to establish an organisational structure in the way that we are, it wasn't possible then. Our current reality consists of the very things that those Renaissance leaders and elders prayed for and dreamed of. And it's the same with the stories we've heard of the WCGIP. Uncle Monty probably wouldn't have conceived of this when he responded to the vision that he received. Indigenous languages, cultural laws and values are good gifts from Io Matua Kore to us, and they reveal something of his nature and love for us. Through individual, collective and intergenerational faith in his nature and love, these good gifts can become the elements, the star pathways, by which we navigate and strategize a route beyond those wire fences to a version of an organisation that expresses more deeply the Indigenous people and dreams it exists to serve, to an island that previous generations could not perceive or dream of, and which our generation may perceive but not see. With this perspective, organisation is no longer a tangible central force compelling what is or is not acceptable or appropriate. It is instead located within the far broader intangible realities of time, space and potential as we understand them to be as Te Rangitukua. As it appears on the horizon before us, the island becomes the substance of what was hoped for. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou te whānau, ko te mea tuatahi māku ki tō tātou matua nui i te rangi, ko ia rā te timatanga me te whakamutunga o ngā mea katoa. Ko ai au, he uri tēnei no Ngāti Awa, no Tūhoi Hoki, ko Irene tōku ingoa. Kia ora koutou, my name is Irene, and my iwi, or tribes is probably people, are from Ngāti Awa and Tūhoi, which are in the Bay of Plenty in the North Island of New Zealand. And this photo here, I wanted to start off with. The woman in the middle is my nana, my grandmother, and I'm named after her. My middle name is her name, and this is my mum on the right-hand side, and that's my auntie, Auntie Linda. So, I'll go back. Okay. So, I just want to start off with Galatians 3:28, and it'll become a little bit more, you'll understand later. So, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. Amen. Excuse me if I read notes. If I don't, I'll go all over the countryside and I might not find my way back. So, okay. So, ko waia, who am I? I descend from my iwi, Ngāti Awa and Tūhoi. I'm a mama, wife, a daughter, auntie, and a future ancestor. Contemplating what kind of tupuna or ancestor I am becoming prompts me to think about the dreams and aspirations my ancestors had for me. What were their hopes for those of us yet to come? Do my dreams for my grandchildren align with theirs? These questions guide my actions as a Māori woman, a wahine Māori, and a follower of Jesus Christ. My contribution to our presentation here will offer reflections on my journey in learning spaces, inspired by a desire to see our communities flourish, to illustrate my fascination with humanity, knowledge and research. I will share some ideologies, theories, and philosophies that inform my thinking, influence my decision-making, and ultimately help me understand the complexities of human nature. That's my nana again at the bottom. That's my mum, and that is my youngest son, Kingston. He's 14. So my interest in people began when I was 19 years old and unexpectedly became pregnant midway through my second year of university in urban central Auckland. Immersed as a child and adolescent within cultural bastions like Māori bilingual education and intergenerational family, and our intergenerational family home, I suddenly became exposed to racist attitudes I'd never previously seen or encountered. My version of normal was suddenly looked down on. And despite sensing injustice, I was unable to articulate the detrimental impacts of that experience on my sense of identity. I knew I was being evaluated by individuals who were entirely ignorant of who I was and whose presumptions about me and my children had a real influence on my ability to access support as a young Māori mother. Their normalising gaze surveilled me as a bad decision maker, promiscuous, irresponsible with money, and too deviant to parent well. All stereotypical attributes assigned to young Māori mothers. I was introduced to the prevailing discourse which relentlessly seeks to persuade us that colonization was somehow a salvation from ourselves. The normalising, disciplining functions of the education system, of social welfare and housing services can be seen as a part of the disciplinary gaze of our neoliberal, neo-colonial nation state. I wondered how many of my people's realities were shaped by such narratives rather than the rich tapestry of their whakapapa or their genealogy. It was through the lens of kaupapa Māori theory and later research, kaupapa meaning purpose, that I began to understand more. Knowledge actually set me free. The hidden history of my people was revealed to me in books, theses, and other literature, each text providing me with the words to grasp the context of my own story and those of many others. I found myself questioning, why do we not know about these things? Research shed light on the impacts of patriarchy from the West, which is the primary and oldest groupthink ideology of humankind, interwoven with culture, gender, economics, religion, education, leadership, and power. Colonising patriarchal practices failed to acknowledge the benefits of Indigenous social systems, particularly in regard to gender, which subsequently redefined the once powerful roles Māori women played in our traditional social order, to roles that submitted to male-dominant leadership. Ani Makaere contends the most powerful indication that there was no hierarchy of sexes lies in modern language. Both the personal pronouns ia and the possessive personal pronouns tāna and tōna are gender neutral. Ia meaning them, they, them, tāna, tōna, theirs, belonging to someone. The importance of woman is also symbolised by language and concepts expressed through proverbs. This exemplifies the critical roles of language in constructing social order, knowledge, and defining realities. Sociological, philosophical, and psychological theorists have long debated what constitutes reality, truth, morality, and ethics. According to social constructivism and constructionist and discourse theories, how we see ourselves, how others see us, and how we view the world differs. Reality is thought to be constructed through language, and the notion of diverse realities is accepted, while the concept of one universal truth is rejected. Makau Foucault asserted that multiple discourses, or socially constructed truths, operate simultaneously, even surrounding the same event, each historically and politically grounded, but neither true nor false. So, if meaning and truth are constructed through language and culture, and what we say and write constructs our thoughts, worldviews, values, and the formation of our social world, contrastingly, several Western philosophical traditions view one universal truth as authentic, which continues to inform what is considered normal. Thus, some truths are afforded more validation than others, as evidenced by our colonial history, where Māori language, cultural codes and narratives were subjugated, colonised and rewritten, about us, without us. This demonstrates the intent behind language suppression, given that language is not politically neutral, for the language we speak both enables and constrains what we think and experience. Furthermore, the mechanisms of language are enmeshed in institutional forms of power, as elaborated by Foucault, who preferred the concept of discourse to language. In her book, Decolonising Methodologies, eminent scholar Linda Tuhiwai-Smith shares her pioneering thoughts about decolonising research. Her ideas are not only provide alternative view an alternative view to deconstruct Western perspectives that claim to know us better than we know ourselves. Decolonising research also identifies links between colonial oppression and its detrimental impacts on the personal realities of Indigenous communities that continue to live within political and social conditions that perpetuate extreme levels of poverty, chronic ill health, and poor education opportunities. Within this context, Māori are routinely exposed to discourses that challenge our worthiness, value, and capability. Smith identifies the constant effort by governments, states, societies, and institutions to deny the historical formation of such conditions, which has simultaneously denied our claims to humanity, to having a history, and to all sense of hope. Smith argues that accepting this reality leads to losing ourselves and becoming implicit. In contrast, challenging the status quo leads to becoming marginalised, but also provides opportunities to redefine ourselves, our realities, and all things that make us, us. Therefore, within the margins of safe spaces of activism, resistance, and hope, to address social issues within the wider frameworks of self-determination, decolonisation, and social justice. Although Decolonising Methodologies was published in 1999, Smith's thoughts are as valid and relevant now as ever, especially given the current political landscape in Aotearoa. It provides the basis for culturally affirming research methods that are by, for, and with Māori. Despite ongoing efforts to suppress our collective voices, the essence of our language and culture endures, upheld by the steadfast resolve and resistance of our ancestors. Their enduring legacy fuels my commitment to add to their efforts, recognising that their offerings were not met without profound trauma. Subsequently, many among us still grapple with intergenerational burdens of addiction, domestic violence, hegemony, and poverty, while the prevailing discourse often blames us for our circumstances, overlooking systemic injustices. Paulo Freire explains the phenomenon of the oppressed becoming blamed for their position in life by their oppressors, who cannot see the disempowering impact of their behaviour. Even when showing generosity, oppressors still struggle to allow the oppressed to thrive on their own terms. It must be on theirs. Freire suggests that ultimately only the oppressed can set themselves free through education, whereby the humanity and that of their oppressors will be restored. Freire defines obstructing others from learning and making decisions as a form of violence, which is how oppression works. By this standard, it is evident that Māori have endured a sustained experience of violence dating back to 1840. Encompassing not only overt forms, but also insidious methods such as exclusion from decision-making processes and the systemic suppression of our identity, language, narratives, and historical perspectives. The Christian Church reflects and reinforces colonial patriarchal practices of oppression. Latin American liberation theologian Marcella Althaus-Reid argued that colonial Christianity brought with it assumptions that challenged Indigenous notions of reality itself. White and male became characteristics of purity, while colonial Christians assumed the Western form of Christianity, with all its cultural assumptions, was the only correct form, ignoring Indigenous spiritualities and knowledge. Contrastingly, Althaus-Reid contends that the communities most able to question the system are those completely excluded by it. The excluded's experience shows the irrelevance and harmfulness of much of Christian theology and how it also, along with other systems, claimed certain perspectives as the reality, although false. Like liberation theology, kaupapa Māori research presents alternative truths that reflect Indigenous strengths and tenacity in the face of systemic oppression. It is a powerful tool of activism. It gives voice to the voiceless and visibility to the unseen. It is indigenising, transformational, emancipatory, and offers positive narrations of the legacy entrusted to us by our ancestors and by God. It affirms our philosophies and prioritizes humanity over scientific pursuits of knowledge. Jesus was a disruptor. He challenged the spiritual authority of the day that would exclude those most vulnerable in society. Galatians 3:28 speaks to the inherent value of all people that transcends social divisions based on ethnicity, culture, economic status, or gender. It provides a theological justification to challenge racism and advocate for liberation for all people by promoting the equality found in Christ, giving me confidence and hope as I navigate research spaces grounded in kaupapa Māori principles. I believe cultural affirming narratives and critical analyses that contribute to the empowerment and flourishing of Māori communities matter to God. Working in the margins to create safe spaces can be difficult, but I know God offers healing and comfort to all those who seek Him, and that it is in Him we can genuinely find truth. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
I'm not being rude, I don't know the song.
Tēnā koutou e te whānau a te karaiti. Tēnā koutou ngā kuia, ngā kaumātua. Tēnā koutou tangata whenua o tēnei wāhi. Ka huri au I nāianei kia kōrua. Ōku tuakana, nei rā te mihi kia kōrua. Ka huri au I nāianei ki te reo Pākehā. First and foremost, it is right for me to give thanks and praise to God and to acknowledge you, my brothers and sisters, for spending time listening to us. And you better, because it cost quite a bit of money for us to get here. But to you, the people of this land, the people of this space, thank you so much for your beautiful welcome to us. And I turn now to my tuakana, my older sisters. I won't tell you how much older. No. Hannah, Irene, thank you very much for your insight and your knowledge, your research, and the beautiful way in which they have named some realities for our people back home in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And they have set me up to be able to tell my story from my lens this evening. So my sisters, thank you very much. And to my tuakana, Hannah, I'm going to set you up for a spike, girl. You got us. Ko wai a hau. Who am I? Ki te taha o tōku pāpa, no manutuke te tairawhiti a hau. Ko hokianga te ingoa whānau. Ki te taha o tōku māma a tāhua, no pamapuria kai taia a hau. Ko karaka te ingoa whānau. Ko Kerien hokianga tōku ingoa. Ko au tētahi pirihi, i roto i te hāhi mihingare. Ko ai taku mahi, he aha taku mahi, ko au te kai kauhau o te rongo pai. On my father's side, I hail from a small town on the east of the North Island in Aotearoa, New Zealand, called Manutuke. So if you ever come and visit, when you blink, you'll definitely miss it, because it's that small. But it is the centre of my universe. We are the Hokianga family, and on my beautiful mother's side, I hail from the far north of the North Island in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that is a place called Pamapuria in Kaitaia. You are welcome to come and visit. And I am one priest in the Māori Anglican Church based in Auckland. My role is a Māori evangelist. Rongo pai, the good news of Jesus Christ. Up on the slides here, I am 4th generation ordained in the Māori Anglican Church. My great-grandfather served in the North Island by horseback. My grandfather, with the purple scarf, was stole. One of my favourite people in this world, the late Archdeacon Bert Clark. Now, he rode around and ministered to people on his Ford Falcon. Sorry to any Holden fans in here. My mother is an archdeacon, and my father is a priest in Kaitaia. And I feel that the Lord set me up, and I too am ordained as a priest in the Māori Anglican Church. And so I want to begin with my story to give you context. As Māori, it is right for us to let you know who we are, so that we move from being strangers to having relationship with one another. And so I worked for a corporate company for 11 years. And this is my claim to the USA before stepping foot here for the very first time with my sisters. I worked 11 years for FedEx. Whoop woo! I have purple and orange blood. FedEx was a place that allowed me to grow as a person, to learn how to foster skills in taking care of people's livelihood, their business, to learn how to articulate myself in a corporate world. And as a high school dropout, I believe that it was the Lord who opened those doors for me. 5 of those 11 years, I found myself being headhunted to join the sales team. High school dropout. being asked to come and sell for a global corporate company? Who am I? I don't sound like them. I will be the only Māori in your team. How's that gonna work? Well, the manager said to me, I can teach you how to articulate yourself. I can teach you business etiquette. But what I can't teach you is what you naturally have, which is people skills. So I want you on my team. And in those 11 years, I was able to learn how to take care of existing business and also to go out of the four walls of FedEx building in New Zealand and hunt for new business. That takes intentionality, that takes knowing your audience, that takes relationship building. And so I come back to saying, God set me up. And just on my 11th year, I was offered a promotion by FedEx to move to Australia to further myself and career with the company. And the same day, the church that I have known since birth called me and said, Kerry, we too have a proposal for you. We have done research, just like Hannah, just like Irene, and we have found that in a city in Auckland, Māori are falling away from the Māori Anglican Church. We are a very old church. Kerry, you are the youngest in the church. Family, I'm 35. That is not so young. However, in the Anglican Church, I am youth. Woo! Woo! Long may that last. Amen. And so the church said, look, we can offer you more work, less money, and no thanks. And I'm going to name him on here, just so that this is recorded. His name is Dr. Reverend Archdeacon, actually, Lyndon Drake. And he called me and said, Kerry Ann, we need to know where our people are going. For Māori, you cannot teach them the things of spirituality. That's not the go. But we want to know if they're being taken care of. Have you got a home? Have you got a whānau of faith to belong to? A tūranga waiwai, a place of standing and belonging, where you too can encounter the love of Christ. And Kerry Ann, we believe that God has called you to go out into the spaces where Māori gather to ask those questions. And so the song that my sisters have helped me to sing this evening begins with Ka nukunu ku kāneke neke, Ka nukunu ku kāneke neke. In English, that translates to, it is shifting, it is moving, something is shifting, something is moving. This was the response from our people in the year 1814 on Christmas Day at a place called Owihi Bay in the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, when the gospel made its way to the shores of our land, our whenua. The song is called Te Hari a Ngā Puhi. You see, when the missionaries came, I don't know if you are aware of the story, the Reverend Samuel Marsden was aboard a convict ship where he met with one of our iwi from the north, the chief, and his name is Ruatara. Now, Ruatara was beaten badly aboard this convict ship, and he was near death, and it was the Reverend Samuel Marsden and his wife, Elizabeth Marsden, who looked at Chief Ruatara from the Ngā Puhi iwi, and they had compassion on him. They didn't throw a Bible verse at him. They didn't say, go to church first every Sunday before we'll look at you. They didn't say, you better know how to recite John 3:16 before we help you. In fact, what they did is they rolled their sleeves up and they did what was needed to be done. And they loved him by caring for him, by feeding him, by clothing him, by looking at him and ensuring that he benefited from the help of their hands and their feet because they had the means to do so. This is part of how the gospel arrived to our people in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Parts of the fruits from this relationship between some of the iwi chiefs from the north, where I come from, where Hana comes from, formed a beautiful flourishing between some of the missionaries. Not all, some of the missionaries, allowing for the gospel to be translated into the language of our heart, as our Taiwanese brothers and sisters shared today. The language of our heart, so that we could latch on to the message of Jesus Christ through the words that go deeper than an English word can. And so, I want to share with you one word in our beautiful language, which is something I hope you can remember. If anything that you take away from my presentation tonight, this one word, aroha. Oh, nice, aroha. Oh, you guys are good. Now, in English, it would translate to love. That doesn't go as deep and that doesn't do justice to what I mean when I say I love playing guitar versus I love my mother who gave birth to me, who spent 9 months of her life with swollen feet and 12 hours in labor. I cannot say that word alone. I love our language. Aroha goes deeper than that. When you break open that word, aro means to notice and to pay attention to. Ha is exactly how it sounds. Ha, the breath, the essence, the life force of the other. Aroha, to pay attention to and to notice the other. That goes deeper than the word love for me. And I turn now to what Jesus commands. He doesn't ask, he commands his disciples, who are just like you and I. We had our moments. Good, bad, ugly, sad. And yet Jesus said, I'm commanding you to love one another, not as Kerry loves you, because sometimes it runs out after midnight when I'm tired. Or when I haven't had a feed, I'm hungry, I don't want to be your friend sometimes. But Jesus says, I command you to love one another as I have loved you. And when we look at the Greek translations of the word love, some of you are scholars. I'm not going to try and teach you something you already know. I'll touch on one of those Greek words, agape love, unconditional love from God, divine love from God. That's the love that Jesus Christ gives to us. This was a message that my people on that day, Christmas 1814, heard. And they said, ka nuku nuku ka neke neke. We're going to shift. Something is shifting, something is moving in our hearts and in our world as we know it, so that we can make space and room for this word that has done what it has done for centuries, ripped into the hearers' hearts. And we hear of many stories across the land of Māori evangelists being formed by the word of God. Some of those are our own ancestors. They took the word of God from the top of the North Island right down to the south to share this good news with our people, to transform parts of our ways of life, not to belittle, but to whakamana, to lift, to say there is another way, here it is. And in the 19th century, history tells us that Aotearoa Aotearoa, New Zealand had 90% Māori Christians. But what does that look like since I let go of the millions of dollars that FedEx could have offered me to come to the church to make peanuts? Holy peanuts, holy peanuts. Sorry, Lord, sorry, Lord. I trust you. While we're here in America. Well, in all honesty, 4 years I have been doing this role, and I have had the honour and the privilege of serving my people. Māori to Māori, talking about faith in Ihu Karaiti, Jesus Christ. Not going into their spaces and forcing myself, because even when you come onto our meeting places, we will knock you on the head with a taiaha, a stick. You wait to be invited. You wait until we allow you into our sacred spaces. And that's exactly how the gospel came, by invitation from Māori, through relationship building. Unfortunately, that wasn't the fullness of how things went, because our people still suffer, even by the hands of the church. In 2024, there are a lot of Māori that I have been privileged to walk alongside of in their homes, in their meeting places, marae, in prisons, on the sports field, in the corporate space, everywhere, in schools where our beautiful language is taught. And there are some who have been so hurt badly by the church, people in the church, that the gospel is no longer good news to my people. That the gospel has been part of conversations around tools used for colonization. And so, what does the gospel have to look like in 2024? Aroha. It has to look like relationship. To look at the other. Why? Not so that I, as the giver, benefit, but so that the recipient does. When I have the means to help my brothers and sisters, I don't go there to try and convert and encourage it. Come on, fill my church so that I look good. No, no, no. The church too isn't a space where Māori flock to and flourish at the moment. The church, unfortunately, where I am, doesn't have many of our people coming to the doors and sitting in those spaces. This is something I am still praying to God about, learning from others, learning from you on how, Lord, do we walk with our people? How do we have these tough conversations, Lord? And sometimes it's looked like, wow, Anglican Church, you've been part of taking land from us. Well, give it back. And I can say, in all honesty and truth, I serve under a God-fearing man, Bishop Te Kītohi Pikahu, who has rolled his sleeves up in some areas where he is able to, and he has said the gospel needs to look like giving back the whenua, the land, to the local iwi where the church has wronged our people. That has brought reconciliation and peace. That's what the gospel needs to look like in some spaces. Not preaching from behind a pulpit only. It's all good, and I'm not too bad at it. Sorry, big head. But it also needs to look like more than just a Sunday. There's more than one way for our people to encounter the love of God. And there has to be. I was blessed to be raised in a family where we know our identity as children of God, the living God, the God who rose from the tomb. He's not in a tomb. The one who says, I give everlasting life. That's what makes me different from every other God. And I gift this to you. You, I look at you, my people. And I also have been blessed to stand in my identity as Māori and proclaim the word of God authentically as Māori. And so my dream and my vision is that our people would encounter the same mana, the same uplifting, the same way that I have encountered the love of Christ, to stand as a Māori woman and with all in my being give thanks and praise to Creator God, to Jesus the eagle, Ihu Karaiti, the one who comes onto marae and isn't afraid of our processes or turns away from us because of the way in which we are as people, but instead says, no, I created you Māori. You can't for the life of you change that. But what you can do, what is in your control, is to accept that that's my love for you, that I'm a God who walks close with you. And so that's the mission. It is not easy, but it is something that I am deeply passionate about and something that God has called me to. And I cannot do this alone. This was a picture I was meant to show you as I described how the gospel arrived. This is a picture from 1814. It's one that I took on my iPhone 15. Look at Samuel Marston. Woohoo. This is a picture of the inside of one of our Māori Anglican churches. Now, some conversations I have get uncomfortable. Why are you wearing that collar? Why are you with the very institution that hurts our people? Oh man, Ricky Lake has nothing on this. But I invite and I welcome conversations like that with our people. Because as much as some people in the church and outside of the church in New Zealand have been part and parcel of the hurt, the kino, the evil done to Māori people, we too have a responsibility to bring solution, healing, restoration as Jesus followers. And so this is not just a church, this is a church marae. This is a church that is also attached to a Māori meeting place, which has beautiful Māori wooden carvings that depict our stories. Nobody else is telling our story. Māori are telling our stories. So when people come, because I don't have a house big enough to invite people over all the time, this place should be a safe space. Come home. Come home, my people. Come home where you're not alone. Come home where we won't give you a credit check. Do you fit the mold? Are you wearing the right shoes? Are you playing that guitar well enough? Can you speak te reo Māori? Ka? No. This is the house of God where all are welcome. And so this place is called Te Karaiti, Te Pau, Herenga Waka, which in English translates to Christ the Reconciler. We must be his hands and his feet. It's my belief anyway, to bring about that good work that we're called to do. And I'm blessed to know that I don't stand alone in the work that God has called me to, but we have a beautiful group of diverse people, Polynesian, European, who are Jesus followers. They may not come out with me into spaces where Māori are because they respect that perhaps this is a season and a time to allow Māori to go to Māori. But what they do help me with is to prepare the inside of God's house to make a place called home for those who come. And I leave you now with the sound and response from Māori in 1814 was that of Te Haria Ngāpuhi. Ka nuku nuku ka neke neke. My desire, my dream is to hear a new response from my people, a new sound of receiving knowledge that they are worthy, that the Lord is wanting to lift their gaze, to allow them in all their cultural identity to be beautiful, authentic, and used for His glory and His purposes to bring about change that's needed, but also healing and restoration. So would you pray with me too in your own time for that to be something that the Lord allows us to see in our lifetime. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you.
Ngā kau koropiko, ngā kau tuohu, ngā kau whakawhetai, heke ana te rai ka tuohu au. Ngā kau koropiko, ngā kau tuohu, ngā kau whakawhetai, heke ana te rai ka tuohu au e hi. Tēnā rā tātou katoa e te whānau I roto I te whare nei I runga I te internet. He miharo hātu kia koutou katoa I tēnei rā. Ko wai a hau e tuake nei. I te taha o tōku pāpā ko Hemi Pōmare. He uri a hau no Ngāpuhi, no te raroa Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāti Rangi, Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāti Rangi Nui. I te taha o tōku māma, he uri hoki a hau o Ngāti Airehi, Ngāti Kōtimana. On my father's side, my father who just passed 3 weeks ago, 12 years younger than the average of any other descendant of settlers in my country. My father, Hemi Pōmare, on his side, on my side, the side of my father, I descend from the tribes of the north, where the good news was brought in 1814, and in the eastern Bay of Plenty, in the Bay of Plenty. On my mother's side, I am a little bit Irish and a little bit Scottish, and I'm all kinds of warrior on all of those sides. It's so good to be with you and just to listen into what's been happening in this room and in the different rooms that we've all been in, and to hear my sisters in their kōrero tonight. I want to start with a verse that you might be familiar with. Isaiah 61 verse 1 says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news, te rongo pai in our language, to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed." In 2007, as a social worker in the Salvation Army's reintegration service in our nation's capital, I began to visit with people in Rimutaka prison. And while I was painfully aware of the statistics, like some of what Irene has shared, it's actually far more confronting to sit there face to face, kanohi ki te kanohi, with those who are often abstractly referred to in the negative press around Indigenous imprisonment rates. In the following years, I went in with our Māori ministry team to facilitate a weekly chapel service in the Māori Focus unit. And over half the men in the unit, for different reasons, would attend for an hour a week. And in that space, thank you, you got my joke, we connected to the Creator using our Indigenous ways of being, our songs, our language, our humour, our connectedness. Why? To realign our thoughts and our intentions to what our ancestors had hoped and dreamed of for us. And we began to imagine collectively, to proclaim and to pray that we would see something new on the horizon, as Hannah said. And what was that? Release for those in every single form of captivity, and freedom for those who are oppressed. And this group of men would often stand together filling the space with harmonizing, beautiful singing voices, with our colourful, poetic, inspiring language, some of which Kirianne has shared with you, the word aroha. It was an oasis in the middle of a prison, in an otherwise oppressive and dry and barren space. Within our waiata, our songs, they took us outside of the waia. They took us outside of what we could see with our eyes. With our language, they took us back to our whakapapa, our genealogy, our historic origins. To those important things that have been passed down to us and should never, never be lost despite our circumstances. It's carried in our DNA. Creating spaces for singing waiata Māori. Waiata means songs or singing. Creating spaces for singing waiata Māori has been a labour of love for me for many years, even though the beginnings of that journey were terrifying and intimidating. When I first joined the Salvation Army in 2004, when I first found recovery and found my way back to just a lifestyle that was going to be better for me and for my children, I was offered the opportunity to sing in the music team. Truth be told, I was offered the opportunity to play the keyboard, and I did warn them that I was really bad, but they didn't believe me until I played, and then they went, here's a microphone instead. Okay. When I first held that microphone, my heart raced, I lacked confidence, my voice broke. Oh man, I felt overwhelmed, totally self-conscious. And I know some of you are like, whatever, I'm telling you the truth. When I first held a microphone, when someone was looking at me, I felt so inadequate, so beginner, so, imposter syndrome is such a thing. And I felt unable to see how a little old me could ever contribute anything useful. Does that resonate with any of you sitting here? However, in a nurturing environment, I found my own voice. I'm doing okay now. I don't feel nervous when I sing. I can hit the notes, I'm doing all right. I found my own voice, and eventually I developed the confidence. It didn't arrive one day when I just woke up and boom, I was confident. I developed as I used this voice that I felt would never be useful to anybody. I developed the confidence to contribute to so many different spaces, and like Kirianne said, not just the church building on a Sunday morning, hello. So over the years, I've led waiata groups, singing groups for all kinds of people in all kinds of contexts, especially those who are beginning their journey, like I had to, of cultural reclamation while in recovery from addiction. And one of the most common positive experiences of participants in those groups is that of the depth of connection. One person said that after their first time with us, he had this real sense of a spiritual connection. I still remember his face as he tried to find the words. That as a Pākehā, a descendant of settlers, a white guy, singing waiata Māori in our language had impacted him so much. He'd learned that the opposite of addiction is connection, and so singing collectively was incredibly healing in an accessible way that he could achieve the connection that he needed. So indigeneity, my language blessed someone else, blessed my neighbour. That is love. Another person said their confidence had gone from 0 to 100 just by finding their own voice. He said, before, I didn't want to be the one to step forward. I was so timid and shy. I would sing quietly, looking around nervously. Is there any of you in here? But that's changed now. Now I sing at the top of my lungs, and my confidence has grown, and I get involved with everything. So now his confidence means participation in things he kept away from before. He said, today I got up on the stage and I spoke at Recovery Church. I would never have done that in the past. I was always holding back, hiding away, shame. But now I've applied this confidence to everything I do, and I'm getting more vocal. Singing, especially in our Indigenous language, but just singing at all. Singing is a prophetic act. And by reclaiming our language and unbinding our tongue, By freeing up our vocal cords, we break down invisible walls, invisible fences, the weightiness of our words, the resonance of our sound, the mana, the authority, the God-given authority passed down by our ancestors and by the Spirit that comes through. When it comes from a place of truth and love, and when it's sourced from, say it with me, aroha, aroha. And when it is Spirit-inspired, it carries authority because the Sovereign Lord is upon us. And He is still able to anoint us now and to bring good news to the poor now, to comfort the brokenhearted, to proclaim that captives will be released, prisoners will be freed, because there is healing in our harmonies and there is freedom in our frequency. On a recent trip to Petra in Jordan, has anyone ever been there? Yo. We walked through the canyons of red and brown and blushing pink sandstone, you remember? And we stood and we sung the song we started with, the Lord's Prayer, in our language Te Reo Māori. And many of the tourists from other parts of the world, they kind of stopped in their tracks like, hey, what's going on there? They stopped to feel and hear the song, even though they didn't understand our language. Their hearts were open. They had their little cameras out and they were recording, and I kind of closed my eyes so that it didn't feel like a performance. But a few weeks later, get this, we heard through the grapevine that a woman with a sore knee was kind of limping her way through the canyon that day, and she had stopped to listen to us. And through a friend of a friend who saw the video and figured out we were the people that she stopped to listen to that day when her knee was miraculously healed. Come on. Thank you. Our voice is an incredible instrument, but there are also many other Indigenous instruments that can bring healing, just playing them. Puoro Jerome Kavanagh explains that our taonga puoro, our traditional Māori musical instruments, and yours, reflect the sound of our natural environment, from the mountains and the rivers, land to the sea. Our ancestors used these instruments in days gone by as tools to heal and to promote healing in the body and the mind and the spirit, the whole being. When space is made for our presence, our instruments, our voices, our language, and our aspirations, then we begin to collectively experience the freedom that our ancestors dreamed of for us so that we might participate and flourish. And this is what has motivated me over the past 20 years to try and create and protect spaces within the Salvation Army to simply be Māori. And while there has always been a warmth and an openness in the social services, the churches and the faith communities, in my experience, and many of my friends, the churches and the faith communities have been much slower to remove the fences and the walls of empire, or to allow the beauty of our culture to transform their systems, their structures, their methods, and their mindsets. And despite the public rhetoric with the microphones and the PowerPoints, by the way, I don't have a PowerPoint, I am the PowerPoint. Despite the public rhetoric and the sincerely, I believe, good intentions over several decades, it has been almost impossible to gather and gain the kind of momentum beyond what felt like cultural decoration to assuage colonial guilt. And if you were to lean in closely and listen through those power struggles over these decades and the wrestle for legitimacy, the Salvation Army seemed to be saying to Māori, if you don't like it, maybe you just need to leave and go and find another church. We are who we are. And indeed, many incredible Māori leaders left and went to the Anglicans. Oh, sorry. Still working on my healing process. Many incredible, stick to your notes, Hannah, many incredible Māori leaders did just that. And they moved to places that knew how to better care for them. And many of us, like me, we chose to stay. Despite the agony, despite the loss, despite the grief, I stayed. We stayed because, well, I stayed because I felt called to stay, and there's no other reason I would have. I felt called to stay and be part of the movement to remind our Salvation Army in New Zealand and Aotearoa of our treaty, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, 1840, the spiritual covenant that created a basis for other people to come and call Aotearoa their home too, alongside us. It was intended to create these relational obligations. And Māori have never forgotten the encouragement of the leaders of the Christian church at the time, the signing of the treaty in 1840. Many of them were Anglicans, like Karuwha, Henry Williams, Four Eyes. And we have never forgotten the promises that were made by the British Crown. However, the impacts of colonisation, the blatant breaches and the broken promises are still felt by our people in every single sphere of life. And sadly, the church abandoned many of its responsibilities and relationships very soon after being part of that signing of the treaty. And therefore they lost credibility with many generations of tangata whenua, people of the land. However, there is still hope and incredible potential for the restoration of that relationship if the church is willing to have a posture of humility. If the church is willing to have a posture of humility, to remember and to revive a more positive role within the story of our country. After navigating turbulent waters within our own organisation over recent years, the Salvation Army has genuinely begun to open their hearts and their minds, reconsidering their relationship with Māori, along with the structural and the systemic implications of co-governance. Get a load of that word. Co-governance of the Salvation Army in our country and shared power. And this led to the creation of an Indigenous Governance Council called Te Runanga that sits in a unique covenantal relationship, the Runanga and our Territorial Governance Board, in a covenanted, as in signed covenant relationship together. The highest authority in the Salvation Army in Aotearoa in partnership with an Indigenous Council. And as a member of the Runanga, I have the opportunity now to contribute to a strategic Māori Governance Council, leadership council that can bring change. And you know, since that has been in place for the last, I think maybe 7 months, more has happened in 7 months than it is felt has happened in decades, just by making that huge moment of change. I'm grateful to be informed by my own journey of a lived experience of addiction and other intergenerational impacts of colonisation, like many of you. And I'm grateful to know the transformative power that comes from walking the pathway of cultural reclamation and supporting others in the journey. And that's aroha. It's not just, yay, look at what happened for me, but now I turn to the next person and help to support them as they build their confidence and find their voice, tupu. As I found my voice in my own song has become clearer and purer, my sound has connected with others who also pursue justice and righteousness. And our collective song, the song that's formed by just us being together in this way and in many different ways, continues to be a prophetic call for redemption and for freedom. And that cannot be restrained by walls or fences or prison bars or governments or policies or law. It stands a prophetic call that breaks down all of those things and helps us to advance in spite of those things. It will not be silenced. It is compelled and it is sustained by love. And so in conclusion, let me share that this journey through our story, the story of Hannah, Irene, Kitty Ann and myself, Hannah, collectively showcases how our dreams, visions and legacies contribute to revitalising Māori culture, spirituality and community life. As tūpuna in the making, ancestors in the making. I'm slightly older than Kerry Ann, 47, and still waiting for my grandchildren, by the way. As tūpuna in the making, their dreams, our dreams guide us towards a future where Māori identity, our values and our systems are normalised and celebrated. And so these narratives have prompted dialogue, and they will continue to prompt dialogue and understanding of the transformative potential of Māori perspectives, both within and beyond Christian spaces. These stories highlight the unique context, the interests and the personalities. Have you seen that today? Man, we're so different, and it takes all of us. Demonstrating the diverse realities found even within our Māori world. Central to our narratives is the theme of Māori agency and resilience in the face of historic injustice and ongoing challenges. And by the way, if you've seen us laughing at the dinner table and laughing up there, and hands up if you've seen us laughing a lot? Anyone? Yes, this is one of our, what would you call it? This helps us with our resilience. So it's all about resilience? Yeah, thank you. So these are our strategies to continue to hold on to joy in the face of the things that we've seen in our world. Navigating treaty settlements, challenging oppressive discourses, fulfilling the intergenerational call to ordained ministry, or setting the captives free through song. Our stories exemplify rangatiratanga sovereignty by reintegrating ancestor wisdom into contemporary life. They simultaneously challenge us, and hopefully you, to confront the legacies of colonization and systemic oppression, and invite you all to reimagine new possibilities for your people, for future generations. Moreover, the transformative power embodied in the teachings of Ihu Karaiti, Jesus Christ, is revealed, especially aroha. For aroha surpasses social divides, fosters belonging and empowerment for all people. And as we navigate our world's complexities, let us also navigate the elements to see the island and envisage a future where Indigenous wisdom and Christian faith intersect, creating healing spaces of empowerment and freedom and reconciliation. Through ongoing dialogue, understanding and action, we honour our ancestors' legacy. We empower generations to come, and we promote the beauty and the diversity of our shared humanity. And we're going to finish with a song, the song that I first learnt in 2007 when I went into prison to visit the Māori Focus Unit. The song is called Wairua o te Puna Aroha. It's about the spirit, the well that draws on the wellspring of love. And when we get to the part that says pupu ake, it's talking about it building up. You know, can you imagine like a spring that's just overflowing? And so it is a reality that we are experiencing as we walk with the Lord in Indigenous wisdom, but we also want to pray it and release that as a blessing over you, that pupu ake, that you would know what it is to have that flourish and thrive within you, collectively, individually, as families, and that you would know the spirit of aroha, who dwells in us and between us and around us. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou, katoa.
The first is a book by Dr. Hinemoi Elder called Wawata, which means dreaming or daydreaming, but it's the role of the moon in dreams. And in our traditions, the moon is female, hina. And so just a heads up that there's what Aboriginal whānau will call women's business in this book as well. But the second book is Wayfinding Leadership. I referenced Shelley Spiller and the work that she's done. This book was written by her, along with Hoturua Barclay Kerr, who was one of Aotearoa's experts in the waka haurua, the double hull waka, and navigation, and also John Panoho. So yes, this is our thank you to you all. Tēnā koutou. That greeting or acknowledgement is called a hongi, and what's happening there is the exchange of breath. The ha is being exchanged, and it's a greeting, but it's also just a very deeply beautiful thing to share breath with others. So, yeah.
My heart is very full, and they're running away. I was going to say, have a seat, because I don't know if we, not as much have questions as maybe a response in this time. And so I'm just going to leave for just a few minutes if anybody would like a response, or even if you do have a question, to ask a good question. We're going to wait for the microphone so that those online can hear.
Thank you, my sisters, my cousin. I'm really touched by all the presentation, and I'm going to do what they also offered to us. I'm going to sing. Finally, you're going to listen from me. I'll just sing very short. The song is just only a song to call everyone to come together. It's unfortunately not from my tribe, but from my husband's tribe. Yeah, you know the stories. I can't speak my language, but anyway, yeah. Ho hayan, hey yo yan ho hayan, hawayan, ho hayan, hey yo yan ho hayan, hawayan, hey yo yan, ay yo yan no one, hawan hayan, hayan, hawayan, hayan, hawayan. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. When I said this to you ladies earlier, in my tradition, one of the very first times that I came into community, we came into this big arena. There was probably 800 dancers on the floor in full regalia and dancing. And there were 4 matriarchs seated at the far end. And whenever anything needed attention, they just stood. And the whole arena went silent. And I watched as they didn't need words, although their voices were strong. They stood, and the community saw the beauty and the strength of who they were as women. And my heart is very full. In my language, we say magwitch, and sometimes we translate it in English as thank you. It does not do it justice. My heart is full and overflowing as I see the next generation, the vision being lived out, and strong voices being challenged. As you bring truth to us, you challenge us to use our voices, to stand, to be who we are, to walk in that, to reclaim space, to challenge colonization in such a graceful and gentle way, to walk in that as followers of Jesus, and to work together in community. I am blessed, and I am so thankful that you are here. And I might just jump ahead, because usually we don't know the theme for the next year's symposium, I admit, until we've kind of gone through this one. But recently we had the CLC, which will do a presentation tomorrow. We had a little dreaming and visioning time together, and when we did, there was great inspiration. And they might actually talk about it a little more. But I was excited because the theme for next year is, does anybody? Say it again, Nicole. Matriarchs and the voices of the matriarchs and women in community. And so I hope we'll see you again next year. So it has been a wonderful blessing. And I think Catherine ran away a little too quickly. Oh, okay, she's there. So I'm just going to ask you to come down, because you have been a matriarch in this community. And we have a little gift for you. And I love to see one generation to the next, and the next. All those that have gone before. And she runs away. There we go. Thank you so much for this evening. And thank you. We are rich. We are blessed indeed. It has been a long, warm day. And so I pray that as we go, we will be nourished. We'll have good refreshment. We'll have a good rest. And we will see you tomorrow morning at 8. 8-ish. So we'll see. I think breakfast is at 7:15 for those that are staying here. But I pray that you have a good night, a good rest, and God be with you.
What should I do?